Everybody, yeah, I guess you don't have copies of the Sikha because you're new. I don't know if I have enough copies for you. You're gonna have to download some more. Maybe just let me check. What we got? Where are our regulars? Where is Fear of God?
No, in a cup.
Thank you.
Just how you like. Yeah.
It's like I don't like actually, but that's what it is. Okay, now. Who needs? I got one. Oh, I got one. Oh, no, go downstairs and I'll make some copies. She'll bring them up.
How many boxes do you need?
Three.
5. You're 3 and she's 4 is 5. I would have an extra. Okay. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this because we are in the middle of something, okay, but what we're doing is we're learning the Chumash. The 5 books of Moses through the lens of the Sikhs. And I started many years ago with Lech Lecha, with the birth of Avraham Avinu. I should have started from Genesis. And when I finish this, when I'll be like 74, I'll start over from the beginning. And we've learned all the Sikhs from that point. And what we're currently doing is the days leading up to Hashem giving us the Torah. And we're really near the end of the Friday. The Torah was given on Shabbos. The Gemara says the Torah was given on Shabbos. There are other opinions, but this is what we understand. The Torah was given on Shabbos. Good morning, Rivka. Just remembering your name. That's Friday, the Jews were converted en masse. A lot of very interesting things happened, which we talked about all winter pretty much. And the one outstanding idea that sort of needs attention is the Jewish people saying Na'aseh v'nishma. There were ceremonies that happened. Those ceremonies were very, very important, and they were also very unique because they never happened again. You know, we're all used to Judaism, and Judaism means doing the same thing over and over again. When that special circumstance comes, and you need to know what to do, that's when you need to be a master, right? And most people aren't. And that day, many things occurred that were very unique, that would never happen again. And the Sikhs that never speak to those extraordinary details that were necessary to happen before the Torah was given. And to frame it, on the one hand, the Torah has not yet been given. On the other hand, you're about to receive the Torah. So the details of this day speak to that space, which is sort of in between before Matan Torah, when the world was in one condition, and after Matan Torah, when the world is going to be in a very different condition. And one of the highlights of the day was the mass conversion of the Jewish people. The Jewish people were Gaia, were converted en masse. So Bris Milah they did in Mitzrayim, because a lot of Bris Milah you can't bring in cotton face. They all went to the mikveh. Tarbonis, sacrifices brought on behalf of the whole lot of the Jewish people. I don't think they had an animal for every Jew, but they had karbonis, which represented the carbon which goes along with Gadas, which, as we studied, is going to happen when Mashiach comes for all Gadim, and we talked about that at great length. And the Jews committed. They committed to be Jewish. In halachic terms, it's called Kabbalah Samis. When a convert goes through conversion, there's an event where they say, I will do. I'll do, I will hear, I'll do, and I will listen, accepting mitzvahs. The problem with Judaism is there's no 3/4 or 7/8 or 15/16. You take it all or nothing. The whole Torah minus one word is nothing. And a Ger Tzedek has to agree, has to accept the divinity and the truth of every single word in the Torah. And on that day, on Friday, the 5th of Sivan, the Yidden made that commitment as a nation, as a family, with the words, we will do it, we will live. Na'aseh v'nishma. And Na'aseh v'nishma is interesting. It's in many ways, the most important cry of a Jew, right? I mean, I guess if you ask the Jew what's the most important statement, say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. You wouldn't think of Na'aseh v'nishma offhand, but Na'aseh v'nishma is up there. You know, Na'aseh v'nishma is up there. I don't know why it's in my head right now, but it's a wonderful Hebrew word, which you don't hear enough in the culture, which is really the essence of Na'aseh v'nishma. And that word is hineni. You ever heard the word hineni? Anybody know the word hineni?
Makabel.
Huh?
Makabel.
That's Hirani.
Hineni. No, Hineni with a nun. It's in the Akedah. Hashem comes to Avraham Avinu and he calls him by his name, Avraham. He just calls him. And Avraham Hineni. I'm here, I'm ready. I was a child. I went to Cheder. I remember learning it. And my teacher taught me in Yiddish. And Hineni was translated, Ot bineh, here I am. Here I am. Here I am means do with me what you wish. I'm presenting myself to you. Hineni is a wonderful word. It means you're presenting to the Abish and say, whatever you need, I'm ready to do. You're presenting yourself as you're offering yourself as in service. I told you the story before that I knew a rabbi who is now unfortunately deceased. His name was Rabbi Nachman Bernard. He was the rabbi of the Oxford Synagogue in South Africa. He went to South Africa in 1963 at the behest of the Rebbe. He was not a Lubavitcher. He was a Talmud of the Rav. He was a YU graduate, the Yeshiva University graduate, and he had a bonus in Kansas. And he moved to New York for Chinuch, and the Rebbe said, okay, Kansas is too far. We're going to send you to Johannesburg, that's closer. Anyway, he went. He served the Rebbe his whole life. I mean, he served the Jewish community, but he did so by the Rebbe's behest. And there's a complicated story how he met the Rebbe, which I'm not going to repeat now, but Rabbi Weinberg told him. Rabbi Weinberg brought him to see the Rebbe. Rabbi Weinberg told him that you're going into the Rebbe for a meeting. It's like receiving the Torah at Har Sinai. That's what he said. And Rabbi Bernard, who was not a Lubavitcher, but he was a deep man and a real man, responded with Hineni. That's what he said, Hineni. I have that story on a recording. I heard it from him. I was in his home and he told me the story and I have a recording of it. I should really listen to it. It's so special. A man who was his own man with his own mind. He's a very deep human being. He's intellectual. He's a braino. He's a book person. Very bright. Who was in the rabbinate because he wanted to be in the rabbinate. He wanted to help people. But he wasn't a chassid. He had his own approach. And he told the Rebbe, whatever you tell me, Hineni, I'm ready. And then they got into an argument. And the Rebbe won the argument. And he moved to South Africa. But Nasa v'Nishma is a two-word version of Hineni. And it is one of the most basic expressions from a Jew. Again, I'm not going to say it's on people's lips, but philosophically, it's up, amongst the most important ideas or phrases in Jewish theology. Assuming you put Shema Yisrael first on that list, Nasa v'Nishma is pretty close to the top. It's a very basic statement. And the Jewish people said it the day before, which means they said it before they got the Torah. Getting it before they got the Torah means that it sets up the receiving of the Torah. Thank you very much. But it also means, thank you very much. But it also means that, can you be in charge of handing these out? Sure. You can handle that responsibility. It also means that the commitment cannot possibly be perfect, because in the Rebbe's word, you cannot commit to something that you don't yet possess. So the Nasa v'Nishma is a preliminary commitment, which would be followed up by a subsequent commitment the next day when they would actually get the Torah, when the Nasa v'Nishma would be on a more ideal level. This is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. Okay, so last week we had two classes. In the first, I gave you two translations of Nasa v'Nishma, which I'm going to repeat in a moment. In the second, we had a class about Bittul, about Kabbalah Sale. I went home and I took out my Tanya and I found that note still sitting in my Tanya that I received from a woman 35 years ago. Please explain to me what Bittul is. It's a personal instruction that I got from the Rebbe. I have that piece of paper in my Tanya. Anyway, I'm not going to repeat last week's class. If you want to get the class, you got to work on it Friday. So the simplest translation of Nasa v'Nishma means, tell me what to do and I'll do it. And after you tell me, I'll ask you why. Nishma means I want to understand. So the simplest definition of Nasa v'Nishma is tell me what you want me to do and I'll do it. And Nish means after you tell me what to do, I'll ask you what it means. A little bit of a deeper definition of Nasa v'Nishma means whatever you'll tell me to do, I'll do. And nishma means, okay, now tell me what to do. So this is a step up because nasa means I'm committing to you. You know, if you trust the person enough, you'll trust whatever they ask you to do, which is a very unusual thing, you know. How many times in your life have people told you, just trust me, huh? And how often has it worked out as the trust insinuated? It's when someone says, trust me, turn the other way. just trust me. Absolutely not. I don't trust you. What? The Abish you can trust. Moshe Rabbeinu you can trust. So Nasa means I trust that you will not tell me to do something which is outrageous and wrong. So whatever you tell me to do, I'll do. Nishma means tell me what to do. So the difference between the first sequence of Nasa and Nishma that I mentioned today, and the second sequence of Nasa and Nishma is that in the first sequence, Nishma means to understand logically. In the second sequence, neither Nasa nor Nishma means to understand logically. It's simply a commitment to God and a commitment to God's commandment. This second idea we're going to be delving into today, I guess, on a deeper level. Well, let's talk about the first one. Let's talk about the first definition. The first definition of Nasa Nishma means tell me what to do and I'll do it, and Nishma, but after I do it, you're going to have to explain it. I want to understand, I want to know why. First, I accept, I'll do it. I'm not going to be one of people that totally understand they won't listen. I trust you enough to do what you tell me, but then I don't understand. I want to teach me, I want to understand. In the expression of the Gemara, Teireh v'lilma v'nitzad, if it's Teireh, the definition of the word Teireh, then we can understand. I want to understand. I want to know why. So, in light of that initial translation of the Nishma, we have what would amount to a classic debate between Chabad's best friend, who Chabad's best friend, and it depends what day of the week it is, right? But on Wednesday, the 23rd of Iyar, who's Chabad's best friend? Right now, in this classroom, the Chabad's best friend is the Rambam. Tomorrow it will be Rashi, yeah, but right now it's the Rambam, because that's what I'm going to talk about. The Rambam talks about mitzvahs. We've talked about this before. The Rambam talks about mitzvahs, and he divides mitzvahs into two groups, not into three. He calls them shemiyos and sichliyos in Hebrew. If you want me to spell that out for you, I will. But it's I can pass it. You want the Hebrew? Shin mem ayin, like Shema, Yud Vav Safed, shemiyos. And sichliyos is sin chof lamed, like sechel.
Shin
Shin mem ayin, and then Yud Vav Safed. Shem Shema Yois. And then Sichlis would be Seichel, Sin Chof Lamed, or Shin Chof Lamed, and then Yois, the same three letters, Yud Vav Safed. Shema Yois and Sichlis means, the word Shema Yois means discipline, mitzvah to do with discipline, or adherence. Shema Yois means adherence. You do what you're told. Sichlis means logical, that you understand. And in the language of the early Rishonim, the Rambam and the Rasag and others, mitzvahs go into two groups. We have three: Eidos, Chukim, and Mishpatim. Right? Judgments and witness and edicts. But in the earlier Rishonim, we have only two: logical mitzvahs and mitzvahs that Hashem said that we don't have. The question becomes: in our relationship with God, which grouping of mitzvahs is more useful, is more inspiring? Shemiyos or Sichel? So here you get to a classic debate between the Rambam philosophy and mysticism, Chassidus, and it's polar. It's mina kota, it's one extreme to the next. And the Rambam way of thinking, which is a philosophical way of thinking, and I'm not going into philosophy at the moment, but I'm just going to tell you the fact. And the Rambam way of thinking, which is the philosophical way of thinking, the greatest thing about a human being is his mind. So the most meaningful things we do in our life are logical and reasonable. They're based on our mind. So from that perspective, if someone tells you to do something and tells you why, you're likely to do it a lot better when somebody tells you to do something and doesn't tell you why. One of my students told me that my classes are on YouTube. I sort of know that, but I don't have access to YouTube unless I unlock my phone. Anyway, the terrible thing that he told me, because I went home last night and I got my phone unlocked and I found myself on YouTube and I spent about an hour watching myself, which was an obscene waste of time, about 2 seconds per class. But yesterday, Tuesday in the morning, I get a class in yeshiva. And the boys are sitting around the table, and directly in front of me is a pile of chairs. A pile of chairs is probably 4.5 feet high, which means all my boys sit on the table. There's this huge machitza between my students and myself of chairs that the janitor parked there when he washed the floor. You know, when the janitor parks the floor, he stacks the chairs so that it didn't wash the floor. Then you come in the morning, you have to unstack the chairs, and he just parked the stack of chairs. So I wanted my student to move the stack of chairs out of the space directly in front of me so that I can see my students and my students can see me. What I probably should have said to him was, could you please move those chairs? But instead I said, could you move this table? Because we were shaped in a U or in a square. So I had to move the table out of the way. So he moved the table in it. No, move the table. So he pulled it all the way out of the way. So it became a game. He pulled it all out of the way, but now we moved the chairs. And after he moved the chairs, and I put the table back. He had no idea what I was telling him to do and why. And you saw clearly what happens when you tell somebody to do something and don't tell them why. When I said move the table, he immediately said to himself, now why did Rabbi Paltiel want me to move the table? Either because he wants the table to be in a straight line, I do have OCD, and that table will look crooked, or because I'm too far away from him, or because he wants me to be, or he doesn't want, I'm too close to him. See, he was trying to decide why I said to move the table, and on that basis, he moved the table a couple of inches, thinking, okay, now Rabbi Paltiel will be happy. He had no idea that the chairs were bothering me because he was sitting on my flank. He could see me and I could see him. So he didn't get like that 3 or 4 times moved. So then we had a whole lesson. So our class was interrupted by the lesson from moving the table. I said, you see, if I had told him to move the chairs, and he would have understood why he's doing what he's doing, he would just move the chairs. But I told him to move the table. So he moved the table a little bit. Now I didn't say move the table a little bit, I moved the table. And even when I told him more, he moved it a couple of inches. And it was a very clear demonstration of the problem with Nasa without Nishma. Clear demonstration. Tell somebody to do something and don't tell them why. And they do it. They're likely to do it wrong. They're likely to do it efficiently. Why? Because if you don't know why, often you don't know what. So you're supposed to ask. He should have said to me, how far? Now, once he didn't do it to my liking, I made it into a spiel. It was a teachable moment. It was a very interesting demonstration of Nasa and Ishma that Rambam holds, what is actually very logical, that if a Yid is going to do mitzvahs correctly, he has to understand them. And it's not just to do them correctly versus do them incorrectly, we do them with meaning and feeling and passion. When you know why you're doing something, what you're doing is more valued by you than when you don't know why you're doing it. So the Rambam, in his Moreh Nevuchim, and the Tzaddik Gaon in his Moreh Nevuchim, they both talk about this, talks about mitzvah shemiyos, mitzvah that you do with adherence. God speaks and we listen. And mitzvah sichli, mitzvah is able to understand. And from the Rambam's perspective as a philosopher, the Rambam says, when you do something you understand, you do it far meaningfully. You do something that you don't understand. And therefore, the goal and aspiration of every Jew is that the mitzvahs that they don't understand should be done with as much meaning and feeling and with precision as the mitzvahs that we do. From the Rambam's point of view, logic is the greatest truth, and it's the greatest motivator of man. When you know the reasons for mitzvahs, you're motivated to keep them. So when you don't know the reason for a mitzvah, you should make believe you know the reason. You do the mitzvah with as much exactitude, as much precision, as much enthusiasm as the mitzvah you fully understand. In the language of the Maimonides, you should do chukim like mishpatim. Logical mitzvahs, shemiyos, you should do like logical mitzvahs, mishpatim, sichli. Because when you understand something and you're motivated to do it, you do it far better. This is how the Rambam would approach. Okay, you with me so far? How does Hasidus approach it? 180 degrees up. Hasidus would say that the deepest relationship we have in our lives is our unconditional relationship with God. Or to say it in other words, it's not the God of our understanding, it's the God that we don't understand. When you relate to the Eibishter based on how much of the Eibishter you understand, it's not the Eibishter you're relating to. That's a common sense of truth. The higher you go in the truth of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the less you understand. And then you reach a point where you say, I don't understand at all, but I know it's true. Chassidus says, a human being has an obligation to wrap his mind or her mind around the idea that the deepest truth in my life is, first of all, my relationship with God, the fact that I can have a connection to God. And second of all, my relationship with God on his terms, not on mine. God has terms, I have terms. The greatest thing I can do for me is to have a relationship with the Eibishter based on his terms. Let me give you a phrase, okay? Mitzvah Hashem, you're getting married. If you were a regular student, I give you my condolences, but you're new, so I always give condolences to the people that get engaged, and then the girls protest, and then we all laugh, and then they live happily ever after. But I'm not giving my condolences because you're a visitor, I'll be nice to you. Next week, if you come back, I'll give you my condolences. You're gonna get married. Marriage has terms. Two people get together, it's a fascinating phenomenon. It's a mitzvah, part of our religion. You're supposed to get married and stay married. It really is powerful because it's very difficult to do. It's the greater, I say being married, not raising kids. Raising kids is tough. I've done both. I feel, I mean, I haven't had a very good marriage, but I'm the greatest life in the world. But I feel the process of two people who are different, a man and a woman are very different in their very basic nature, should come together and make it work. They each have to change themselves so much. It's hard, it's work. I tell my students, the hardest year of marriage is the first. I mean, wow. It's the most exciting, but it's also not the easiest. Because you're not really married. You're living together. Marriage happens over time. You know, the idea that you sort of become one happens in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years, and in 10 months, it's wonderful. But that's about it. It's wonderful. But the concept is incredible. But part of getting married is, forgive me for speaking this way, but it is true, is negotiating terms. You know, you come into the marriage with certain expectations. You come into the marriage with certain desires. And just for disclosure's sake, I would encourage you to tell your husband what you desire. Because even if you tell him, he didn't hear you. But if you don't tell him, one thing I can promise you about a man, he will never in 50 years guess what you're thinking. Now, to you, the proof that he loves you is that he'll guess what you're thinking. Give it up. He'll never guess right. He'll realize that you wanted to guess, and then when he guesses, you're so stupid. But you want me to guess, yeah, but you guessed wrong. So give it up. You want something your husband, tell it to him straight. When you're engaged, not after all these things went wrong and you're married 6 years, you list of complaints, and you finally try to tell the truth. Tell him now. So you have desires, you have expectations, right? The terms of the relationship. The terms of the relationship. The terms of the relationship are binding. What does that mean? If you take those terms away, you don't want the relationship. If the things that are important to you in a marriage are not met, you say, why did I do this? Whatever those things are, everybody has things that matter to them. Obviously, you want to have peace in your marriage. But for some people, it's very important not to get lost. They want to remain their individuality and separate, which is a pretty good idea. I'm not giving a marriage class today, okay? I'm not.
Can you?
Of course not. I'm totally unqualified. I never went to school. I don't have a professorship in marriage. Nobody else does either, but I don't either have one. But listen. The end of your marriage, and I mean this in the most positive way, is that the terms don't matter anymore. Whatever it was that you needed for this marriage to work, in quotes, and obviously, I tell this to boys and girls all the time, the most important reason you date is not to find out if you agree about this. It's simply to find out if you like each other. If you date a boy and the checks are all right, and you don't like him, you can't marry him. If you like him, if you really like him, he really likes you. And you disagree on certain things, so that can be worked out. You don't like a guy, you can't marry a guy. It's simple. It really is. And it goes both ways. That's really the reason Hasidim, who are very into tznius, meet and spend time. You have to decide if you live with this person, you like the person. And like I said, there are terms. But over the course of your marriage, it's not marrying. Because the marriage becomes its own truth. You become so connected to this person, you literally become one. Over time, the idea that we were once not married becomes like, really? We were once not married? We were once strangers? And you can't even imagine it. That's what the goal is. And then the terms go away. And this is the mashal. The nimshal is our relationship with God. What kind of terms do we want in our relationship with God? See?
Right.
So the Rambam is going to say, I want terms that are reasonable. And I don't want to start off with the Rambam because when we talk about the Rambam, I don't mean the Rambam personally. I mean the Rambam as a philosopher. The Rambam was a human being who lived on this earth. He was a very big tzaddik. And his level of fear of heaven is extraordinary. He was a very, very giant of a man. But his writings conform to the rules of philosophy because of the time and place in which he lived. He wrote philosophically because this is what people needed to hear or willing to hear at the time. In as much as his teachings are concerned, the Rambam's teachings is that if a human being wants a relationship with God, they have to make sense to him. And they don't make sense, it's hard. So therefore the Rambam says, some of the mitzvahs make sense, some of the mitzvahs don't make sense. You want the mitzvahs that don't make sense to be important to you like those that do. And the ones that do are the basis for the relationship. You follow? Chassidus says something very, very different. You don't want a conditional relationship with God. You don't. Now, if you knew that your husband was actually God's gift to mankind, and he ain't, he's just God's gift to you. If your husband knew that you were God's gift to mankind, and you ain't, you're God's gift to him, yeah, you wouldn't want any condition. Why? If this guy is so wonderful, I'll take him any way I can get him. Chassidus says, you don't want a relationship with the English that is on terms. Why? Because he's God.
Can I give an example?
God's gift. God is in fact God's gift to man. Well, the examples are nuanced. The examples are nuanced, and I don't want to give examples because I don't want to give a class on marriage. But I'll get to it. I'm heading in that direction. Allow me to get there in my sense. So Chassidus says exactly the opposite of that. Chassidus says the greatest expression of our bond with God is when we do something we don't understand at all, just because He said it. Right? What's the example? Okay, here's your example. I don't know what your fancy is, but there are kids who follow sports. The kids who follow other shtus or whatever they are. If you meet your hero, the person that you think is God's gift to mankind. Why? Because he can throw a ball or he can swing a bat or something extremely sophisticated and religious and holy and important. Yeah. If you give me a glass of water, what would you say? 250? What would you say? Thank my lucky stars. I get to bring a cup of water to my hero. Right? In other words, there are people on this earth that you don't know really. If you knew them, you probably wouldn't like them so much, Part of the miracle of what do they call it? Stardom. There's better words for it. People with a lot of fame. They're just people. They really are just people. But we have hero worship, the culture creates these super people. And if you have an opportunity to bring a cup of water to your hero, it's the greatest thing in the world. Because for you, the reward is that you can serve him. So Chassidus says, your sports hero or your music hero or your arts hero is wonderful. But God, He's more of a hero. Now the problem is a lot of us say, really, how? He doesn't entertain me, he doesn't make me laugh. So how? Well, he just makes you be every second from nothing into something and other good stuff like that. And the most important thing is the greatest gift God gave to man. I tell this to you all the time, and I think it needs to be repeated. The greatest gift God gave man is God. The greatest thing we have from Hashem is that He's here. And wherever we walk, He walks with us. It's not just a cliche, it's deeply spiritual.
Right.
The greatest thing Hashem gave us is Hashem. Not His mitzvahs, not His Torah. That we are next to Him, that He's with us all the time. It's a deep idea. It's a faith-based idea, but it's an organic idea. It's not philosophy, it's life. And we live a life based on emunah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we live a life based on faith. The faith informs us He's here always, and wherever I go, He goes with me. He never leaves me. That is one thing. Doesn't pay my bills, doesn't solve my problem, doesn't heal my broken heart, but it holds me in an extraordinarily important way. So, in your relationship with God, you don't want to turn. Let's just say it's like you've been married for 50 years. Now, there's a lot of things God likes that you really can't stand. He can hurt you more than your husband can, if that's imaginable, but it is. But He's God. And you don't want a relationship, you don't want a conditional relationship. You don't want to relate to the Eibishter by giving rules. I want this, I want this. And by the way, we all have rules. We all tell about rules. God is a great listener, not like our husband. He's worse than our husband in responding, but He's better than our husband at listening. He listens and keeps quiet. He listens and keeps quiet. And he listens and keeps quiet. And we tell what we want. But what we really want is a relationship with God without any term. Or to say it in more philosophical form, we want a relationship with God in His terms. Chassidus therefore says, the most desired aspect of Judaism are those things that we're told to do without understanding. Okay. When Hashem tells you to do something, it makes no sense. And the only reason to do it is because He said it. That's the maximum expression of connection to Him, His Spirit. That's the maximum expression of a connection to Him that's unconditional. And that's what we desire. Want a relationship with our hero because He's our hero. So Chassidus would spin it the opposite. Chassidus would argue, not you want to do shemiyos, like sichliyos, hukim, like mishpatim, but instead you want to do sichliyos like shemiyos. You want to do mishpatim like hukim, meaning a mitzvah you do understand. You shouldn't do it to the extent that you understand it. You shouldn't do it in the way that you understand it. You should do it like as if it makes no sense, blindly, whatever you say. So the world of the Rambam, the nishma completes the nas. In other words, when you do a mitzvah, you understand that you appreciate it, and you do a mitzvah that you don't understand, but you do it as if you appreciate it, it's a shleim. And Chassidus is the opposite. The greatest kind of mitzvah is the mitzvah that you do that's just for Him. And the mitzvahs that we do that are not just for Him because we understand them, we want to do them in the kind of way that they're just for Him. And both those interpretations are in the words Nasa v'nishma. Just depends how you spin it. The Rambam would say Nasa v'nishma. I'm going to do mitzvahs that I don't understand. V'nishma like the mitzvahs that I do understand. Chassidus say Nasa, I'm going to do mitzvahs because He said v'nishma, and I'm going to raise up the mitzvahs that I think I know the reasons to a level where I'm going to do them just because He said. Questions or comments? Find out how much work you can put in the comment. I can do better. I'll be unlucky you can't make a bracha. But I can't think about it.
By the way, that's what I said
You know what?
in my invitation.
Oh, I didn't see the invitation. Did my daughter? You sent it to my
Oh,
daughter?
I'll send it to her now.
No, she had to see it, and then she'll make fun of it. That'll be good enough. You probably sent it 5 times.
No, I didn't send it. I didn't send
Okay.
it. I didn't send it.
Does anybody have any questions or comments? And it's a sincere offer because in 2 seconds I'm going to keep talking, and then you're going to have to keep listening.
I just want to confirm that I have this written down correct. Okay, so the Siklios are the logical based commandments, and then the Shamios are the like obedience based.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, correct. Okay. I want to ask you about my son, but I'll wait till the last video.
I thought your grandson's too mental.
He's this guy.
Thank you.
When his father was his age, he was just 16. I had a grandmother who now passed away. She used to say, Yossi, your barrel looks more like you than you do. I say, barrel, your mendel looks more like you than you do. That's sweetness and neshama, first and neshama. See in neshama. Okay, no I know. Hello, internet, no I know. The worst kind of I have an electronic one. Why you have no personality? Can't even change his mind. There's no good. Okay, he doesn't have an eye either. But
An alumni message to ask if she can come into class now.
say that again.
An alumni message to ask if she can come to the class right now.
Why not? Yeah. Why so much respect? I'm not used to that. Okay, people. Let's move on. Okay. The second tier is right. Nasa, I'll do whatever you tell me. Nishma, now tell me what to do. This approach to Nasa and Nishma is consistent with Chassidus, right? It's consistent with Chassidus. Because Chassidus says that the greatest form of a relationship that we can have for the Eibishter is if we don't have form, don't have terms, unconditional relationship. Nasa is, I accept you. Nishma is, I accept what you tell me. Now, think about that in you. Think about how profound that is. Think about how profound that is. I'll tell you a piece of gossip about me. I'm not a very public person, but I am a semi-public person. I'm just people who are more out there than I am. I'm in my classroom and on my website, but people know. And from time to time, people ask me to endorse things. And I get into a lot of trouble. People get so upset when I won't endorse things. I'm sorry, it's not my thing. I don't endorse things. Endorse projects. I endorse the art about the art project. I actually judged it. I marked it. You know, the pictures that they made. I looked at the best pictures and I gave my opinions about them.
Did the newspaper one win?
I have no idea. Oh, that's my phone. The primary reason I endorsed it, and this is the point that I want to make, is that I love the kid who's doing it. He's a bucket. He has no money, he has no connections, all by himself. He has this drive, and I just love his guts. I love his ambition. I love his belief in what he's doing. He's not a rabbi with a Chabad house. You know, let me do an art project. He's a single guy, all by himself, who has this enthusiasm for Chassidus and for art. And I met him. So here's my gossip. Here's what I want to say. People come to me and say, listen, I wrote a book. I want you to look it over. I say, I have no time. If you write a few words about it anyway, I'm not going to read it. I will endorse a book if I like the author. I've written very few endorsements for books, but I don't really write endorsements. I write endorsements for people. And someone said to me, Rabbi, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to endorse the book. I said, I didn't read the book. You see rabbis who write haskamas. There are rabbis who write haskamas once a week. So either they're brilliant, they have a lot of free time. It takes time to read through a book of 200 pages of halacha or chassidus. How can I endorse your book if I haven't read it? So I don't know the program. You know, when the Rebbe was given, the Rebbe did not endorse books, by the way, as a matter of principle. But he would write letters of thanks and encouragement, and he also write notes. When my uncle told me, uncle was Rebbe's secretary, when the Rebbe got a book, and the Rebbe got many books, spotted, and some of those books were scholarly and intellectual and deep and powerful. The Rebbe would stop what he was doing, and he would turn the book. You could watch him do it in his room. He would turn pages like as if it was a picture book. And he would turn each page. The book was 200 pages. It took a couple of minutes to turn each page. And they never got the whole book. The whole book. He read it, and he understood it, and he judged it, and he had an opinion about it. And my uncle told me one of the most incredible stories. A man came to 7 with the book of Halacha. It's one of the most serious books, because Halacha is Megillah L'Mais. It's not just philosophy of life. And he handed it to Rabbi Klein at 10 minutes after 3. Mincha is 3:15. He's going to bring it into the Rebbe. And he said, yeah, I'll do it after Mincha. He said, no, please bring it before Mincha. He says, why? Well, I want the Rebbe to see it before Mincha. He should make a comment to me. So Rabbi Klein said to this man, if I bring this book into the Rebbe's mouth, the Rebbe is going to be like the Mincha. So he said, please, let your hands up. Anyway, he did it. I'm trying to figure who's so respectful. Oh, okay. He brought the book into the Rebbe, and Mincha was late. The Rebbe for the entire book. So instead of talking about C15, it came out say 3:25. But he looked at the entire book, turn the page. When the Rebbe walked, the Rebbe washed his hands in his. When he walked out the minute, he didn't stop to look at anybody. He would go straight into the shoulder, he would close the door, and the Rebbe would down. Actually, he would stop. He would give people nickels and dimes. So he put in the pushka before mincha, but he wouldn't talk to people. On the way out, he would greet people. People were leaving, the Rebbe would say goodbye. It was an opportunity. This man, who was a respectable man, a known personality, was waiting in the hall. And he knew that before Menachem, the Rebbe was not going to stop to talk. But the Rebbe walked back into his room. He said, well, yeah, I got it. Thank you very much. Any comment? He was pushing the Rebbe. Yeah, I read the book. You didn't mention the Alter Rebbe once. Alter Rebbe is a book of halacha. You know, you look through a book and you can find something written there is one thing. Look through a book and find what's not written there. You have to read every word. Took him 10 minutes. Cheat. Never looked through books. He had an obsession with books. And he had it. So for the Rebbe to write the Haskam on a Sefer, he would look through the book and he knew it all, and he wrote you up an opinion, which he didn't do anything. But the average rabbi, you get a new Sefer, there's 25 pages of approbation. Each one of those rabbis read that book. Really? Every one of those rabbis who wrote that letter wrote 100 letters like that each year. They read 100 books, maybe. But I can't do it. I can't read one book. So my approach is if I write an endorsement, which I almost never do, I'll write an endorsement on a person, not on a book. And usually it's an underdog, the person that nobody else notices. So I write it. I've written 2 or 3 letters on spot that people wrote, but I didn't write it to the person. I didn't write it to the Sefer, I wrote it to the person. Why? Because the person I know. And if I know the person, I'm not writing an approval. The book I didn't read. So to me, if the person is not a hypocrite, the person is genuine and sincere, probably the book reflects them, and I like them, so I'm writing that. Haskam. But that's not what most people do. Most people say, okay, I'm going to approve the book. You, I don't know. I don't know you. I know what you wrote. I'm not saying that I'm right. I just think it's more honest for me to write a book, to write an approval of a person that I know and I have a relationship with, and write an approval on a book which I haven't read. But because he wrote it and he said, please, very nicely, I'm going to write a letter. It's for me, it's hollow. It doesn't work. I can't do it. Anyway, the point is, in our relationship with God, there are these 2 layers. There's the personality and there's his book. The personality is God. The book is the Torah. Nasa speaks to him. Nishma speaks to his book. And we say it in that order. Nasa, I'm good with you. And therefore, Nishma, I'm good with what you wrote. And that's very, very unusual. A lot of people have a lot of good ideas, do a lot of wonderful things, write a lot of wonderful books. But not a lot of people deserve unconditional love. Not a lot of people deserve unconditional adulation. Not a lot of people deserve unconditional trust. I trust you in this book because I read it and I like what you wrote in this book. Next book, I'm not going to agree with. But to say to the person, I trust you, so whatever you do is good, the person's got to be God. And that's what Nasa and Nishma is on the higher level. Nasa, I'm in with God, and therefore Nishma, I'm in with what he told me to do. In other words, Nasa is higher than Nishma. It's a higher truth. Nasa, the commitment to the Eibishter himself. Nishma, the commitment to what the Eibishter is telling us to do. In that order. We need to break. Anybody's saying. But I want to just say one more thing. Now, whenever I say I want to say one more thing, it means that we're going to break at 5 to 12. The jinx is in. It's built into the glass. There's a Mishnah that says this. There's a Mishnah that says it. What I'm saying, in other words, is even though when we were little children, and I was a little child, and I went to Chayim, and I lived Nasa and Nishma, my teacher taught me Nashma means I'll do what you say, Nishma means I want to understand. There's a lot of evidence to the Hasidic approach, Nasa and Nishma, that both the Nasa and the Nishma are about commitment. Both the Nasa and the Nishma are about submission. Both the Nasa and the Nishmas, I don't need to appreciate, I don't need to agree, I don't understand, I commit. Nasa is to the giver of the mitzvahs with the capital G, and Nishma is to the mitzvahs themselves. So there's a Mishnah. The Mishnah, the Masechta Brachos, which everybody learns. They learn at such a young age in their life that they're still paying attention. Okay, that the Mishnah speaks about Shema. The very first mitzvah that a Jew does in his life or her life is say Shema. Why? You become bar mitzvah or bas mitzvah when the sun sets. The first mitzvah you have an obligation to do biblically when the sun sets, especially if you're a man who's obligated to mitzvahs that are called Zman Groma, that are time special. So the Shas, the Mishnah begins, when do you reach Shema at night? Meaning every bar mitzvah, the first mitzvah he meets after he turns 13 is Shema Yisrael, when the Shas begins with that question. When do you reach Shema at night? So the Shas begins with Shema, and then it talks about the blessings of Shema and a whole bunch of other stuff. One of the issues that comes up in the discussions in the Mishnah is Bein HaBrach, that there's a separation. There's the first bracha, there's the second bracha, there's the first part of Shema, there's the second part of Shema, there's the third part of Shema, and then there's the bracha after. And at night there's two brachas. Bein HaBrachim, between the sections, in the middle of the section, it's whatever, it's not important now. So the section of davening connected to Shema is divided up into pieces. This comes first, this comes second, this comes third, this comes fourth, this comes fifth, this comes sixth, fourth, seventh. So the Mishnah says, okay, so in what order are these pieces arranged? So the first blessing is such and such, the second blessing is such and such. Then comes Shema Yisrael, then comes the Hoya Im Shemayim, then comes Iyar, and then comes Evid B'Yachid, or at night Evid B'Yachid. So the Mishnah asks the question, why are they in this order? So the exact wording of the Mishnah is, Lama Kodma Shema L'Hoya Im Shemayim. Why do we first say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad? You have to understand the unity of God to the extent that you develop a love for Him, and then V'Hoya Im Shemayim Bishma Mitzvah, you do it again. The Mishnah asks that question. Why is Shema before V'Hoya Im Shemayim? Now, if you were a 14-year-old yeshiva buck with a sharp brain and a big mouth, he would blurt out, what do you mean? Shema is an Chana and the V'Hoya is an Eitim. Because they appear before the Chumash. Shema is in an earlier section of the Torah than V'Hoya Shmayim. And your teacher, who's 24 years old with a sharp brain and a big mouth, would blurt back. In that case, you should say V'Yomer first, because V'Yomer is in an earlier Chumash. And they scream at each other, and that will be the end of that. Okay. The reason the Mishnah is asking the question is because they're not sequential. V'Hoya Shema doesn't come right after Shema; it's in a separate page. If it would be sequential, there wouldn't be the question. Because they're two different places, even though technically Shema is earlier with the Chumash and V'Hoya Shema is later with the Chumash, you don't put Shema before and V'Hoya Shema after, because in the Chumash Shema is before and V'Hoya Shema is after. It's because it needs to be this way in Shema. And the Mishnah answered. Today she kabel of el malchus my pillow. The achekach kabel of el mitzvah. The answer is because first you accept the yoke of the kingdom of heaven. You accept God, and then you accept the yoke of His commandment. Now I went to school, Chavra. I learned that Mishnah. I think I can remember my teacher teaching me the Mishnah. I don't remember who the teacher was, but I remember learning that Mishnah. I do, because it resonated with me. But you need to stop and think about it. When you go to school and they teach you stuff, you don't stop and say, wait a minute, I don't understand. But you know what it means to accept somebody unconditionally? I accept you. Then I'll accept what you do. Really? Don't do that with your husband, man, because he ain't God. Yeah. With the Eibishter, first you say to Hashem, I accept you. No conditions. Then I accept what you're going to say. It's extremely reckless. That's what it is. It's extremely trusting. It's unbelievably trusting. But we're trusting God. It's pretty good bet. They're not making another one. You know that. They've been trying for a long time. They ain't making another one. They tried to kill him. They tried to replace him. They tried to split him. Now a bunch of them. I bet there's one age that he's in charge of heaven and earth. But that's what you're saying. Shema means I accept you. V'Hoya Shemayim means I accept what you're saying. It's like I said, when you don't think about it, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's extraordinarily big. You're just going to trust Hashem? Really? Just trust Hashem? Yep. Now, it's a good policy, it actually makes sense. But it is extremely courageous, extremely trusting, and most unusual, because besides for God, you would never do that. And you shouldn't. But when it comes to the Eibishter, because he's the Eibishter, you first say, I accept you, then you say, I think you have to say. So the Mishnah asks and answers the question. The question is, why is Shema before why is Shema? And the answer is, because first we accept or we submit to him. Then we accept and submit to his instructions, which is really not. It should be the other way. I like you because I like what you believe. I like you because I like what you say. I like you because I like what you teach. I like you because I like what you command. But it's about the parts of you that have reached me, not your essence, not that you are by yourself. But in our relationship with the Eibishter, we do exactly that. And on this Mishnah, there's a Gemara, there's a Chazal, which is also brought in by the Marshal, the Melech, Shanich, Naslamedin. It's a Medrash. I don't think it's a king comes into a city, and the people are so excited to have a king amongst them. If a king would show up in Crown Heights, if he wasn't Melech HaMashiach, I don't know. I pray for him to leave. I don't like to be close to big people because you can very easily get good. The king shows up, and everyone's so happy that the king is here. When the king arrives in the town, the people come running up to the king and say, what that means? Tell us what you want us to do. Tell us what you want us to do. I told you the story last week or 2 weeks ago. I remember? The Rebbe Rashab said a maimed about Mesiras Nefesh. Remember? Anybody? Did I tell you the story or not?
Remember.
Did
I
I tell you
wasn't
the
here 2
story?
weeks ago.
Did I tell you the story? How the Rebbe Rashab said a maimed Chassidus, and the people thought they weren't going to understand. I didn't tell you the story. I didn't tell you the story. So much for hitting in class in five. I told you Friday. Oh, it's an unbelievable story. The Rebbe Rashab became a Rebbe at the age of 21. He was almost 22, to be sure, but it's terrible. It was so hard for him. No Rebbe became a Rebbe at such a tender age. The Rebbe Marash became a Rebbe. He was 32. And that was young. The Rebbe became a Rebbe at 40. Our Rebbe became a Rebbe, he was almost 50. The Rebbe Rashab became a Rebbe, he was 21 years old, 22 years old. And from everything that we can see, it wasn't supposed to happen. The Rebbe Marash gave up his life so the pogroms would stop in Russia. It was a spiritual thing. He was supposed to live a few more years, not a lot, but a few. And the Rebbe, it says in the Rebbe Rashab biography that the death of his father took a terrible toll on him. It was one of the worst things that happened to him. So the Rebbe Rashab spent literally 10 years becoming a Rebbe. It took him 10 or 11 years to fully mature into the condition. But a different story. During those interim years, Lubavitch was in a very precarious state. There were other chassidists, there were other Chabad chassidists who were doing very well. And Lubavitch was teetering. That a young Rebbe who one day was a Rebbe, the next day he wasn't a Rebbe, one day he was around, the next day he wasn't around, that kind of thing. But the diehards stayed loyal to Lubavitch. And then once the Rebbe Rashab became a Rebbe, he became a Gayet, which is another conversation. But one of the things that happened those interim years was that the people of the city of Lubavitch, and the city of Lubavitch is tiny. I was in Lubavitch. You can walk from end to end in 5 minutes. It's a village. It's a little hole in the wall. It's very 10 minutes. It's very small. Very small. But people lived there. They were subsistence farmers. They were very poor people. They lived from the land, and they made a living from the guests. When the guests would come to Lubavitch and see the Rebbe, they would host them and charge them a couple of pennies. In other words, Lubavitch was a good business. But the Lubavitchers were not chassidim. They were farmers. They were uneducated, simple people. They were beautiful people, but they were pashti and very, very simple. So they had no business with the Rebbe. The Rebbe was there. The Rebbe was a significant part of their income. But that's about it. They didn't go to the Rebbe. No. But it was an occasion which was a Lubavitcher event. When I say Lubavitcher event, I don't mean a Lubavitch Chassidic event. I mean a Lubavitch community event. I didn't tell you the story. Oh, I can't believe it. It's very appropriate for this. The Lubavitcher community was a community. So they had a Rav, And they had a moil, you know what community needs, yes? And they had what's called the Chevra Kaddish. Chevra Kaddish means undertakers. I told you the story. How long ago? 2 weeks ago. Okay, you see that Chevra, everyone's listening so amazingly well. Please think of it. I told you the story. At the age of 27 or 26, they appointed him the Gabbai of the Chevra Kaddish. It was an honorary position. He didn't participate in Taharis, he didn't go to bury people. But the Rebbe of Lubavitch, in each generation, in the city of Lubavitch, was an honorary president of the Chevra Kaddish. It was the same way here in New York. So they made a Kiddush. And the Kiddush, the Rebbe Rashab said a Maimed. So when the Rebbe Rashab started to prepare to say a Maimed, the people who were at the Kiddush said, you know, we're not going to say a word. They didn't understand Chumash with Rashi. The Chassidus were way over there. You know, they had respect, but they expected to be completely overwhelmed. And the Rebbe said a Maimed to them. The Maimed is available in print. And I was just thinking recently, I really should make a tumult out of it. 100 years ago this year, the previous Rebbe wrote a Maimed based on that same Maimed. And the title, the subtitle of that Maimed is El Anash the American, for Hasidim in America. 100 years ago this year, the previous Rebbe wrote and said a Maimed, which is based on the Maimed that this story centers around, where the Rebbe Rashab was sitting with the Lubavitch Hasidim, and like everything else, it should really be celebrated. We should like make an issue. 100 years ago this year, the Rebbe Rashab sent a Maimed to the Hasidim of America. I mean, America in 1925 looked very different than today in so many ways. Yiddishkeit was really crawling. It was very difficult to be in America. There was this attitude of apathy and b'diavad, you know, you don't do it too good, kind of. And he said this Maimed, the very same spirit. Anyway, the Rebbe Rashab said a Maimed for these Pashat Yidden about it, and they understood every word. Because he spoke to them, not actually. And the gist of the Maimed was the idea of self-sacrifice, martyrdom. The brain understands that you have to put your body in hot water, but the brain doesn't go, the foot goes. And the Rebbe explained that there are all kinds of people. Some people are called the brains of the Jewish people, some people are called the eyes of the Jewish people, and some people are the feet, the simple people. And the feet, or the simple people, who are the least sophisticated, they're the ones who are most prepared to go in. So he said it's very powerful, it's not very long. It's 3 pages in print, which probably is 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And the people of Lubavitch couldn't believe that the Rebbe said a Maimed Hasidic, they didn't understand. When he was finished, the mood in the room was Pashat love. They were so ingratiated by the idea that the Rebbe said a Maimed that they could understand. So when the Maimed was finished, it was a silence. And the silence was broken by one of the simple Lubavitcher Jews who stood up and he said to the Rebbe Rashab, on behalf of the entire community of Lubavitch, Gabbai, we're ready for Mesilas Nefesh. They made him the Gabbai, they made the president of the Chevra Kaddish. And the Rebbe spoke in this Maimed about the theme of Mesilas Nefesh. So he said to the Rebbe Rashab, we're ready. We're ready for Mesilas Nefesh. And the Rebbe Rashab gave instructions what they should do. And the previous Rebbe who told us, the previous Rebbe was 7 at the time. He was there. And he remembered it. He said the effect of that day lasted till World War I, 25 years. The point of this episode is someone tells you to do something and you do what they tell you is one thing. You meet a person and you commit to the person, it's quite enough. Because when you commit to a person, you have no idea what you're committing to. When you commit to a particular instruction, you know what you're committing to. Even if you don't understand it, at least you know what you have to do. So the Mishnah asks the question, why does Shema become before? Because the Yiddish wants us to accept him first. Getting back to the Chazal. King comes into a land. Remember how we started this? Marshal and Melech comes in. And the people run over to the king. They're so excited to have a king in their midst. And they say to the king, tell us what to do. And the king answers, Kablu Malchus. I am a king. I don't deal well with conditions. Accept me as your sovereign. Then I'll tell you. If you want to be an independent nation and you want to pick my brain is not available for the people. For that, you can have a politician, for that, you can have an advisor, for that, you can have a chacham, for that, you can have a pseudo chacham, a pseudo advisor, a pseudo politician. I don't think you can put pseudo politician in the same sentence because it's a redundancy. But a king, so the king says to these people, you want me to give you this, I'll be happy to. But first submit to me. First acknowledge that I am the king, then I'll tell you what. Which is a very unusual relationship. But that's our relationship with the Eibishter, so the Mishnah says. First we commit to the Eibishter, then we commit what the Eibishter tells us to do. That is the meaning of Nasa and Mishnah. We will do doesn't mean I'll do what you say. We will do means that I'll do whatever you say. It's about you. We will hear doesn't mean I'll understand, as we discussed earlier. But we will hear means we will adhere to the individual instructions that you're hearing. Questions or comments? Huh? Questions or comments? So, I'm sorry, it's 4 minutes to go. We're gonna stop, but we're coming back in 4 minutes. Okay, the class is over in 20. I have to take a break because there's somebody in this room who needs that break for the sake of her neshama. So we're gonna honor that.
Thank you.
I told you 5 to 12. I'm a bum. I'm such a bum. Okay, 5 minutes, people. 5 minutes. Breathe. I got my poison.
Would you like to hydrate after your poison?
I need hydration and a little more poison. Which is not okay. Yeah.
Water and coffee?
No, just a couple. I think I got the good thing on that.
That's her, right? Or was it before? There was no. Where are you going for lunch? I'm trying to get
That's so cute. You're going to Shira?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Shira. Oh, I love going to Shira.
She wants me to bring the green or not. Laura can't come, but like, I think I asked you, but I can't remember what she said, so. Yeah, I'm excited. Yes, we do.
What do I gotta do? What do I gotta do? I know what I gotta do.
I'm not ignoring you, I'm just. I'm not ignoring you.
Oh, that's where you're going? To Rabbi Dubov? That's so cute. Does this child look depressed?
This is childhood. That's
okay.
Fine.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I can include this. Rabbi Paltiel, I'm writing a book.
Oh,
Will you endorse
no,
it?
that's it.
Actually, I'm writing a book.
Okay, found it out.
Thanks, boss. It's pretty useful. My kids won't care if you endorse it or not. Sorry. You know my favorite book you helped contribute to
Which one?
on purpose, Robinson.
Oh, I didn't do very much. He interviewed me for a few minutes.
Oh, well, you're in the thank yous.
This is my father and my.
Oh, so cute.
It's so
Where are
fresh.
they?
They're in a park. I mean, I know my parents for my whole life. That they should hold hands. Never.
That's so cute.
They're literally holding each other up. I mean,
Where do they live?
nice.
Oh,
My
wow.
brother comes once a week from Long Island and takes them out. It's very
Oh.
beautiful.
Wait, in Long Island? We went there for Shabbos.
Yeah, so he comes to Crown Heights and this is a local park. This is picture.
Oh, how cute.
I wish I could publicize it, but I can't. But my father's a rabbi. Yeah, I don't do such things. Not blind, you're blind. Yeah, I'm having a very hard time hearing you because of the echo of your car, but your questions are rhetorical. They are
Mm-hmm.
childish
How far is the Upper
questions,
East Side
you know?
from here?
The questions are.
What's the Upper
statements,
East
you know?
Side?
Like
How does it
Manhattan.
work? when it comes to
I don't know.
Torah?
I'm the wrong one to
Mine
answer
was-
why.
Oh, just because you've been here longer, I thought that you would know.
Last night Laura was explaining to me how New York works.
Oh, what were we asking?
Yeah, then.
I
She-
said, how long, how long does it take to get to the Upper East Side of Manhattan from here?
Oh, you should ask Danny. She'll know. Oh, Danny was coming from there. It took her, my friend Danny. It would take her like 40. Oh, that's why you're asking me because of Danny?
No, because I saw a camp thing.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
It's not far, like, usually, if you're in Crown Heights, you're already closer to it.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, like from my area, it takes me like an hour.
I-
to get to the
Wow.
bottom of Manhattan.
I was just thinking, would it be worth it to commute
Yeah.
to the Upper East Side?
Fine.
Yeah.
It's not
Like,
bad.
I'm not in a position to answer right now. The juxtaposition of free will over all the neshamas is a complexity, not just for a non-yid, but for a yid also. But there is bechina, and there is a teva. And somehow those two interface and work together and work off each other, even though it's complicated. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna move on, people, y'all.
Let's go.
Okay. Okay, shall we? Read a little bit. Okay, I did give you some papers, let's read them. And we're gonna reread the same word we read last week, okay, and maybe read a little bit more. So the way it works, for those of you who are new, I handed you a piece of paper, first page, it's 221. We just read the underlined words, okay? If you don't want to get lost, just when I finish the words that are underlined, you go to the next line. There's another core idea about chonis the Kabbalah Satera in preparation to receiving the Torah, which is Hakdomas Nasa Nishma. The fact that the day before we got the title, we as a collective declared Nasa Nishma. We will do and we will hear. This event, this declaration happened Lifnei Kabbalah Satera, before we received the Torah. B'chamisha b'Sivan, the 5th of Sivan. We're going to talk about this some more later, but that's for now. That's enough. Okay. Now let's just think out loud for a minute. Twice before, we said Nasir without Nishma. Moshe came down from the mountain and he told us about the term that the Eibushter was setting, and we said Nasir twice. Now we consider Nasir and Nishma are more meaningful statement than Nasir alone, which is in itself odd because Nase, according to Chassidus, is the higher level. Nishma, according to Chassidus, is the lower level. According to the Rambam, Nase is the lower level, Nishma is the higher level, right? But according to Chassidus, Nase is the higher level and Nishma is the lower level. So how is Nase and Nishma better than Nase without Nishma if Nishma is secondary to Nase? Let's leave the question alone. Let's just put it on the shelf and remember that it's there. I'm reading on. That first of all, when it comes to our relationship with God, first of all, to the Aliyah Sagnamat Nase, this is the foundation of our relationship with the Eibishter. We do it, we accept him, whatever he says. And in that order, Nase means I accept you, Nishma means I accept what you're going to do. In other words, Habitl Makabbalah said. This concept of bittul, and as I told you before, the Oxford Dictionary edition 2026, it's written that the translation of the Hebrew word bittul is bittul. You cannot translate bittul into any language. The minute you translate bittul into bittul, it's such an achmanas on the word. Either you mutilate the word or you neutralize the word. Either you make the word sound cruel and bad, or you make the word sound fluffy and meistic. Okay, neither are true. You can't try. It's a very deep idea. It's a submissiveness. It's a big, which is mystical. It's not human. It's mystical. The ability to supplant your will with the Abish's will on a fundamental level is extraordinary. That's what the word bittul means. And then the next word is Kabbalah El. You accept the yoke of God. Now, if you were here last week, I talked about the difference between Kabbalah sale and Atolah sale. Kabbalah means you accept the yoke, and Atolah sale means you have the yoke imposed upon you. Well, then afterwards, Nasa Matan Torah, Hashem gives us the Torah. And what happened after that? Anybody? We take it. The Kabbalah Satayah. He gives and we receive. Before he gives and before we receive, we committed. And the sequence of our commitment was first Nasa and then Nishma. Now, let's read out. Next column, Shahabitl, the Agdomas Nafal Nishma. The meaning, the significance of having a bittul of Nasa before a bittul of Nishma. It's not only bittul to what Hashem is telling us, to what Hashem wants, but to the master of the world. These expressions are Hasidic. Okay, in my mother Hasidic, you have two levels. And you have it in many Maimonides. You learn that Rebbe Maimonides, the editor, this comes up a lot in Yeshua's Maimonides. Nasa means you commit to God. Nishma means you commit to his instruction. Right? Shema, the first parsha of Krishma, you commit to Hashem. V'hoyim Shemoyah, the second parsha of Krishma, based on this Mishnah and the Gemara that goes on it, is linked to his mitzvahs. So in Hasidic jargon, they just use different words. And they use different words because the new language has a certain depth which is not clear from the classic form. Nasa means you commit to the master of the will with a capital M and a capital W. Nasa means I commit to the Baal HaRatzon, to the owner of the will. Nishma means I commit to the will itself. In other words, Nasa means I'm committing to Hashem, who's the source of the mitzvahs. And Nishma means I'm committing to the mitzvahs themselves. In the Samach Vov, for example, in Maimer of Sidis, the Rebbe Rashab writes, Nasa is only one. Nishma 613. There's only one God, so there's one Nasa. There's 613 mitzvahs, there's 613 Nishma. And we do the Nashma first. Which I told you a couple of minutes ago, seems to leave the Nishma as a redundancy. If you've committed to God, of course you're committed to what he said. And we'll talk about that soon. But in the language of Siddur, what we talked about in the last hour is Nasa is the Baal HaRatzon, the commitment to the source of the will, and Nishma is to the Ratzon itself. Okay? Shemitzad Atzmei, that when you talk about the difference between God and his commandments, the difference is the Eibishter is Lamaila Gam Meharatz the Tegel Bishul. When you make a commitment to the Eibishter, you've made a commitment to Hashem before Yiddishkeit. You've made a commitment, you've attached yourself to Hashem. Not only in as much as what you need to do for him, you've attached yourself to Hashem in as much as he is. So there's more, when you're committing to the Eibishter, you're committing to Hashem that's bigger than Torah mitzvahs. Even though Torah mitzvahs are very big, not just practically, but spiritually. And then you commit to his mitzvahs. The Nasa v'Nishma, the most important part of Nasa v'Nishma is the sequence. Putting the Nasa before the Nishma that makes Nasa v'Nishma special. If you would say Nishma and then Nasa, it wouldn't be a big deal. On the Pshat level, for sure, Nishma we don't understand, Nasa I'll do, no big deal. But even on the Hasidic level, Nishma I'll commit to what you tell me to do, and maybe one day I'll commit to you. Nasa. What makes it novel, what makes it so powerful, is the fact that we're putting the Nasa before the Nishma, which is counterintuitive. So we're committing to the Eibush first, and we're committing to what we say. Okay? Does anybody want to speak? This is your opportunity.
It's not formed yet, not now. At the end, maybe.
Here's my question. Why, if you say Nasa, you need Nishma? If you've committed to God, why do you have to commit to the commandment? It's a legitimate question. If I trust you, of course I trust whatever you tell me to do. And there's also a very realistic answer. And I guess the simplest way for me to illustrate it is by telling you a story, making a point, but it's already 11 minutes after 12, so here we go again.
We'll come knocking.
Huh? It's funny after you. Lunch. Lunch. Elevation of sparks, excuse me. Elevation, we're going to delay the spark. There's a story in the Chumash where all the 12 princes, 12 Nesiim of Karmanas, to initiate the Mizbeach. You have the Chanukah of the Beis HaMikdash, the initiation of the whole temple of the Koyanim, and then the Mizbeach specifically was inaugurated not by the Eibush, but by the 12 Nesiim. The first 12 days in the month of Nisan, each one of the 12 princes of each one of the 12 tribes brought a carbon on behalf of their tribe to represent the initiation of the Beis HaMikdash. They brought the identical karbanas, but each one had a different intent. That's why it's repeated 12 times in the book. They did not include Levi. They did not include Adam. And he was very hurt. They got together, they had a meeting, they didn't invite him. Now, why didn't they invite him? Don't worry, they were nice guys. But the fact matter was that the 12 Shvatim brought karbonis for Chanukas on Mizbeach, and they did not include that. So while this is going on, and Adam is feeling very unhappy, Hashem speaks to Moshe Rabbeinu to tell Adam HaKohen about lighting him. And on those words, and as she says, tell your brother, Adam was disappointed that he wasn't included in this event of Chanukas Mikdash. And Hashem tells Moshe, tell your brother he shouldn't feel bad. Shall have your carbon is greater than their carbon because you get to light the candle of the menorah. So yours is greater than theirs. And there's a wonderful Ramban, one of the most wonderful Rambans ever written. Only one Ramban, by the way, just said a lot of nice things. But the Ramban says that this doesn't go on the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. This goes on the menorah of Hanukkah. Because the story of Hanukkah was that the Beis HaMikdash was desecrated. And Koyanim, Aaron's children, they fought off the Syrian Greeks. They kicked them out of the Beis HaMikdash. They kicked them out of Yerushalayim. And ultimately, they kicked them out of all of Eretz Yisrael. And they renewed the Beis HaMikdash. And the renewal of the Beis HaMikdash at that time was represented by a carbon on the Mizbeach, but the menorah. Hashem said to Moshe, tell your brother, his Chanukah is greater than this Chanukah. He's just going to have to wait 1,000 years. 1,200 years. They're initiating the Mishkan. Your brother's family will initiate the Chanukah. Their Chanukah is greater than this Chanukah. And there's a whole spiel about this, which I'm not going to get into, but this is the Ramban, which is really delicious. A wonderful Ramban. And of course, he explained it with more details. So the rest of the story continues. Hashem tells Moshe, tell your brother he shouldn't feel bad that he was not included in the offerings of the princes because what he does is greater, he lights them in him. And then you have a pasuk in Chumash, which, no one ever gave attention. You just keep on reading. But if you stop to thought about it, it seems kind of weird. It says, Vayas came out. Adam did exactly what he was told. The mul, they have made a hell and made a seven. He lit the candles of the menorah, and he made sure that all the candles on the side were facing the central light or the western light, wherever the western light is. Hashem is Moshe, God Almighty commanded Moshe Rabbeinu. Says Rashi. Yas came Aaron did such Melamed Shaloi Shina. It's teaching us that Aaron did not deviate from the instruction. God told Moses to tell his brother how to do it. He heard it second from the Eibishter himself, and he did what he was told. Yippee do. Really? That's the greatness of Aaron HaKohen did with the Menera. So the pasuk shouldn't be written. Of course, if Hashem told Moshe Aaron did it, you don't even need to say that Aaron did it. It's question A. But what is it actually adding by saying that Hashem told Moshe to tell Aaron he shouldn't feel bad and all the rest because he's lied to the lied to the greater things that. Of course he did, and of course he did it correctly. Why does the pasuk have to say it and actually have to qualify it? It's self-evident, right? What's that guy's name? Say to Watson. Sherlock Holmes says to Watson, elementary, Watson, elementary. It's of course. How do I know that? That's a great question. Elementary, Watson. So the Torah actually have to tell that I got the print a lot. That he did it this way, so the Rebbe says, "No, it's a pshat." When God tells you to do something, there's a tendency to get excited. And when people get excited, they tend to ad lib, they get carried away. Because Rashi, Adam was incredibly delighted. He was so uplifted by these words. But when he came to lighting the candle, he didn't let his emotions play a role. He did exactly what he was told. Shaloi Shina, he didn't deviate, he didn't fix it, he didn't enhance it, didn't make it better, didn't make it worse. He did exactly what he was told. And you know what? It's an incredibly big deal. If your superhero gives you an instruction, you like it, so excited that you trip all over yourself. Melamed, Aaron HaKohen, was told by the Eibishter through his brother Moshe, nobody else in between. This is your mitzvah, do it, and he did it the way he was told. He didn't get high, he didn't get low, he didn't go right, he didn't go left, he did it. And it's not so easy to do what you're told, precisely as you're told, especially when there's so much emotion involved, is an achievement worthy of being identified in the Chumash and qualified by it. Actually, the Lamed Shalei Shir did exactly what he was told. In the Hasidic lore, there's a story, the Chabad Hasidic lore, there's a story. It was a very famous tzaddik, a really famous tzaddik, who was named the Baruch of Mezhebush, the Baruch of the city of Mezhebush. The Baruch of Mezhebush was the Baal Shem Tov's grandson. Shem Tov had a daughter named Abu, who was much more famous than her brother, Baal Shem Tov's son. She had some very famous children and grandchildren. That means most notably, you've also the name of Nachman of Braslov. The Nachman of Braslov was the Baruch of Mezhebush's sister's son. The Baruch of Mezhebush was the grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. Nachman of Braslov was the great grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. And to put it mildly, they didn't get along so well. The Baruch Mezhebush was a very big tzaddik, a very big tzaddik. He was Baal Shem Tov's grandson, and he used to say all the time, "Well, have enough with Kid, I'm in charge of all the tzaddikim. Since I'm the Baal Shem Tov's grandson, all the Baal Shem Tov have to follow me because I'm the heir of the Baal Shem Tov." But they didn't follow him in their own path, and it became an issue. Well, he had a Baruch Mezhebush had issue with other tzaddikim, more than one or two, but one of his tzaddikim criticized was the Alter Rebbe. He didn't like this Chabad stuff. He felt that the Baal Shem Tov never authorized it. You can finish them any way you wish, but that's the mitzvah of brother. And he was outspoken. If he didn't like you, you knew. You didn't keep secret, you know. He told exactly what you thought. So he criticized the Alter Rebbe. He spoke out against the Alter Rebbe. I mean, there are stories that show how much respect he had for the Alter Rebbe, but at least in one aspect, he would criticize the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe had a very close friend who would later become his Lord. Their grandchildren would marry each other. Whose name you know? It's a household name. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Baditch. And the Baditch Rav was so close to the Alter Rebbe that he would defend him when other Hasidic Rebbes and other people would criticize the Alter Rebbe. He felt he should defend the Alter Rebbe. So he met the Baruch Mezhebush. And he says, "What do you want with my mechutim? What do you want from the Alter Rebbe?" So he let him have it. He unfolded the bit of the guns and unfurled all of the time. And the Baditch Rav said, "I don't understand what you want from him." And he said these words in Yiddish. Ich hab gesehen lehen. Und ist gewesen, kule lamailo, und hat nicht ausgelost, kein ein Tag lamata. It would translate English as follows. I watched him read the Torah. Al Rebbe was one of those dudes who did everything himself. He was the Balkan, he used to read. And he was completely up there. He wasn't in the world when he read. And he pronounced every word and every letter and every syllable and every musical note precise. And it's given cooler reminded completely in the heavens, and he didn't leave out one detail on it. Meaning, you get all the excitement you want. You gotta do what you're told. And that's why it has to say Mishma after Nas. Committing to the Eibishter can result in not listening to the Eibishter the way the Eibishter wants, because you're so caught up in the Eibishter, you can't step away from that and do the instructions exactly. So you have to say both. Naseh, I'm committed to the Eibishter, but Nishma, I'm so committed to the Eibishter that I'm going to calm and quiet whatever passions I'm feeling, whatever energy I have to do the mitzvah. The mitzvah must be done in this world. Okay? And we'll continue next week. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Wow,
Yeah.
thanks.
For 1 second, so tell me about my son.
Oh, well, what?
You were there or you were not there?
Yes, I mean, I was not by his house. We were doing it to fill and giveaway. So your son came and Rabbi, I don't remember the other rabbi's name. But he was there also, like in the Philadelphia area, and then,
Which Chabad? Which
so they came to one of his students' houses,
one of my son's
students.
guys. He
Yeah,
lives in Fishtown.
yeah, I'm just trying to, exactly,
Wonderful.
yeah.
The next
He was
time
there.
that happens, you take a picture.
My cousin has pictures,
Please
so I
send
can,
them.
yeah,
You have my wife's phone number. Yes, send it. to her.
yes, I do.
She'll be so delighted to receive the honor. Did
Yeah,
you
but
do
Menzel
also?
was, yeah, like sometimes I do the giveaways with him.
With my daughter-in-law there?
No, it was just Menzel and your son. Yeah,
How my son look?
like you. Similar to you. You look
Differences.
alike.
Differences